Welcome to Decolonize Your Palette, a conscious living podcast exploring the many colors, flavors, and textures of decolonizing our palette. I'm your host, Krishna Omehika, New Earth Guardian and self-love guru. I am just so excited to launch this podcast. It has been many years in the making, and I am just so excited for all that is to come. We are in an interesting movement in our culture right now, all across the globe. And as we move into this shift, we have a unique opportunity to dive deeper into this journey of decolonizing your palette. So, as I said, this is a conscious living podcast. So, the intention is to highlight the many perspectives, stories, and vantage points that exist when we are upon our journey of decolonization. I'm your host, a guide and facilitator through this journey, and I'm just so excited for the many guests that will be joining us from many different walks of life. It is my immense value that with a multidisciplinary, multicultural, and intersection group, we can really dive with more vibrancy in those colors. And we're going to be exploring this topic from various perspectives, including art and Indigenous wisdom. We'll be exploring the notion of conscious consumerism, as well as high-frequency foods, sustainability, fashion, music, and all the rest. My mission here is part of my role as a New Earth Guardian. I've been given beautiful and divine insight. And so through this process of not only being very curious about the human condition, but now moving forward in this new way, offering a space to really dive into the decolonization process, I do this to support our journey in unlearning all of the dynamics of the matrix, or the colonial reality, as I call it. And colonial reality because in a lot of theologians, authorships, or speakers, or people in traditional sciences, in modern sciences, not traditional, these westernized notions of colonialization is kind of a past experience rather than something that is currently being experienced. And it is my opinion, and for those many across the world that really understand and lean on Indigenous wisdom, that we do not live in a post-colonial reality. We live in a colonial reality. It isn't something from the past. It is ongoing. And so I'll share more about what I mean when I say colonial reality and all the subsections and subtopics that go underneath that, including things like land ownership, including things like time to enslave us, including things like using food to toxify the body. And there's so many more ways in which we can address this topic, and we will in this podcast, so stay tuned for all of those stories. This podcast is also intended to support my mission to help us remember building consciousness and connecting to our higher self, our higher voice, our intuitive wisdom, this truth that comes through and is reminded to us, or we can feel remembrance of us through Indigenous wisdom, is remembering the inner truths. This naturally helps us build our self-discovery skills, because we begin to be really curious about the self and about the human experience. And so we listen to other stories, and we begin to notice the aspects of our life that bring on a lot of disharmony, that bring on a lot of stress, that bring us to a state of feeling like we cannot control, or a lack of control, anxiety, depression. All of these manifestations come from living in a colonial reality, because it's a very oppressive and suppressive. And as a human, we naturally want to expand. So anything that feels suppressive, we're going to feel that, whether or not we have the energy or even awareness to begin to push against that. And this podcast is intended for us to explore this process. This is also intended for us to boost our self-awareness, because when we have a greater sense of self-awareness, we can actually view our experience not just from our everyday daily lens, which I would call the micro layer, but through those layers up into that macro layer, taking a bird's eye view, being able to zoom out and look at all of the moving pieces in our life and the lives of others, and for those of us that resonate, taking on a more global perspective, one which I do and is part of my role as guardian. But we all have different roles. So boosting our self-awareness is enabling us to get in touch with our unique purpose. What our intuitive self, really that inner soul, if you will, is intended to do. And so this podcast's mission awakens sovereignty, because we have an opportunity to listen to others whom, whether they've mastered or still in a exploration of mastery, are already walking upon the path of decolonization and can really view things from this different layered perspective. And it allows us to get some insights on tools to help us in our journey. So I am just super excited to offer this space to share this with you. And I guess it's my turn to introduce myself. I am Krishna Omahika, starseed, trained psychologist, educator, and lover of Mother Earth. I'm here as a New Earth guardian. And I say that title with just so much oomph and power. And often I get asked, what? You're what? It's hard to encompass what I do in specific roles, because I do a lot of different things. And I would love for you to dive into the different aspects of my offerings. I'll be sharing that towards the end. But let me share with you my journey. What motivates me? What's my why? And I want to share a little bit about that with you today in this episode 1 introduction and welcoming to you in this space of exploration, of boosting our ability to live a conscious life and to allow ourselves more freedom and liberation. I come to you with varied background. As I mentioned, I'm a trained psychologist and educator, and spent many years of my life walking in the colonial reality, learning a lot about systems and structures, and I've always felt called to be of service. Because of my unique experiences in my life and traumas, I felt very called to work with youth and started my journey as an undergraduate exploring how to help young people. and wind up finding early education as a career field, and really resonated with working with young minds and feeling really called to go this route. I decided to explore this, and I worked in education for many, many years, working with very young children, infants, and toddlers, all the way up to high school and college students later in life. But my journey as an educator and professor allowed me through that time also a chance to participate and learn about the systems and structures in place that provide support for community. And it's always worded as if it's support, but in my journey, I've actually come to understand that many of these organizations are not necessarily designed to improve the life of its clients. Rather, it is mainly to address their current needs. And it's almost like a Band-Aid, much like our current health system, but we can talk about that another time. So, as I walked upon my journey working in nonprofits, working for health and human services, I had a chance to really observe and see the way in which, at the macro level, humans, community, and persons whom were of disadvantaged groups, again, at the time, not really understanding that we create all the systems, and so we can change it at any time, that the systems which disadvantaged folks, how those systems really worked. And I really began to understand from a more systemic perspective, because that is part of my gifts, being able to have a bird's eye view, having the energy of the bird to really allow vision and foresight. I, at the time, was, looking at it from a very micro layered vision, looking at how my role could improve the lives of these people. And of course, not really ever thinking about my own self, the healing that I needed to do, or that was really impeding or impacting, if you will, my experiences that I was having. Fast forward many years after I worked at the college level, working with bachelor and master students whom I love and still am in connection with many of them today, I really just was feeling a sense of disheartenment with the ongoing pattern that I observed from organizations, nonprofits, and particularly that had this cycle of utilizing what I call the silo effect. So having their community and their funds very localized and not collaborating or sharing out with other entities, and sometimes a duplicate or overlap would be created, and really being curious about deeper or more structured forms that utilized funds with more effectiveness. I saw a lot of repetitiveness, and I did not see a change in the dynamics of families. Seeing generation after generation continuing to live in poverty, and working with them one-on-one and through mentorship as a supervisor and director for various programs, I just began to really notice a pattern. And around 2013, I decided to leave my 9 to 5 because it was bringing me way too much anxiety. I just had a really hard time with, getting paid, my really lovely paycheck, but also knowing that there is this continual cycle of disadvantage that existed. And these organizations that were to improve the lives or to help families just really were a place or a breeding ground for more trauma, or for just a lot of disadvantage. And I'm sure my stories of those years will come through in this podcast so I can share more. And if you have a particular question about my journey at any point in my storytelling, please drop a comment and let me know, because I would love to share that with you. So again, I started my entrepreneurship and decided to really just lean on my strengths, and took many years to really fortify or find an avenue of branding myself, if you will, being able to encapsulate all that I am and that can offer. That required me to figure that out for myself. And I will be sharing a lot of that in this podcast, because that's a huge part of our decolonizing process. We really do have to unlearn a lot of which we've learned in order to have a decolonized lens and be able to see our reality in a much different perspective. In 2016, I was just feeling really passionate, because just for so long, again, as I mentioned, noticing all these disparities, and in my own passion, I decided to step forward more with the activist in me. And I went to Pacific Oaks College and also taught there for many years. And their focus and mission is all about social justice and social change. And that always resonated with me. And so, being passionate about this, I decided to connect with some other professionals at the time whom I had built a very strong rapport with. And we were talking about, what if we were to create a coalition of leaders and practitioners offering these various things in community outside of the scope of these corporate entities, one that is more self-governing and had a more natural give and reciprocity, building in collaboration with community and clients. And I just felt like it was such a great idea that I took the lead and developed a website and, took the lead in creating and crafting something for our team. Went back a few months later to check in with everyone. Well, everyone at that time had decided to go on to other things. They were pulled in other directions for whatever reason, and I was at an impasse. I was at a point in my life where I had to decide, do I continue this thing that feels so important, or do I abandon it because it's no longer a team effort? And being a leader that I am, I decided to forge forward independently. And so Social Change Coalition was birthed, officially launching itself in 2017 through various different activities. But it is still active today. You can go there, socialchangecoalition.com. And it became a place to share my philosophy based on all my lived experience for creating a movement for change. Something that would allow us to really feed and experience the world decolonized, and one that provides unlimitless wealth, abundance, and liberation for everyone on the planet. And so it is a global justice and global liberation movement for change, one that is intended to be very global in its reach. And so with the birthing of Social Change Coalition and acting as CEO and lead, it really began to fortify my experience walking and being the embodiment of a decolonized human. And it allowed me to expand my reach and learn a lot more about myself and my role in this journey that we are on at a global level. And so since that time, many of my offerings have been kind of reshifted and recalibrated as I, for myself, became more clear about what my purpose really is. And in 2019, I received a very strong divine message. I had already been going through my spiritual awakening and getting more in touch with myself as I included meditation and mindfulness into my life through living a conscious lifestyle. I began to really get in touch with some deeper wisdoms, and again, the energy of the bird and the visionary. I really started walking that path with more intention. And as I said, in 2019, Self-Love Creatives was birthed, a place for mentorship and facilitation for leaders or anybody who is ready to become one, to really step into their purpose on purpose. And so you can tap in and learn more about my offerings at selflovecreatives.com. And I'm just so excited because now these two, seemingly at the time, I thought, I have to put aside or pause Social Change Coalition because we're not quite ready for that. I need to birth Self-Love Creatives. I've come to understand now where we're going as a world, that part of it is the integration of what sometimes feels like dualities in our life. And so decolonizing our palette is stepping into becoming an agent of change, allowing our culture to be recognized and given the beautiful star in our life that it is, a recognition of how important it lights up our life, and use that as a guiding place to move into shifting our consciousness so that we can really experience the truest gifts of this life and what Mother Earth has in store for us. So I am just so blessed to have everyone here. As we continue in this podcast, I'll share a bit more of some of the other offerings that I have, including all of the beautiful and amazing healing and wellness products that you can tap into if you're interested in learning more now. Before waiting until we talk more about that, you can check me out at selflovecreatives.com/lovelymeboutique. And that actually will take you straight to my boutique where you get a chance to see all of those unique things. You can also follow me on Instagram at lovely.me_boutique. And for other things to come, food alchemy, plant medicine wisdom, get a chance to learn more about mindfulness exercises in this podcast. You also get a chance to tap into a brand new, exclusive, membership-driven space that I'm crafting to promote conscious consumerism as a part of a sacred economy. And I'll be sharing more about that. You can follow me at New Earth _collectives. That's at NU Earth _collectives. And I'll be sharing more about that here as well. If you guys have any questions or you want to know something specific about decolonization, drop it in the comment box and we would love to answer your questions. If you are a conscious lifestyle expert or you want to jump in this podcast and tell your story, I would love to have you join us. Drop a comment, send me an email with your contact information, and we will get started on that conversation. You can contact me at selflovecreatives@gmail.com, and let's get this conversation started. Sending you all the bliss for your upcoming week. Anticipation for future episodes. We're going to have somebody coming on to talk about conscious living with food. We're going to be exploring food alchemy, living a high vibe life, eating high alkaline foods. We're going to be learning also a little bit about secret additions to our meals, superfoods that we can actually use to boost health and wellness, and that is super crucial in living a conscious life and decolonizing our palate. So stay tuned for that. And also, at the end of every episode, we're going to have a call to action. So if there's something that you would love to add to your list of daily routine or any tools for your toolbox, let us know so that we can include that in our calls to action, where we're going to be shouting out individuals, practitioners, educators, experts, and organizations that you can plug into and take action to support your journey. I hope that you have an amazing week. Until next time.